Hello and welcome to Flow Mountain Bike's review of the Lapierre Zesty 314 EI. Electronic intelligence, but it's French, so it's probably electronic intelligence or something like that. Now, I'm not going to go on about this bike too much, so much as I'm going to talk to you about the very smart suspension system. Just how smart is it? Well, we're not talking Rhodes Scholar, we're not talking Stephen Hawking's, we're probably talking a little bit above average, you know, maybe like a 102 or something like that. It's pretty smart. But before I start banging on about the suspension, just a quick 20-second wrap up of this bike. It's a fantastic trail bike, 140mm travel rear, 150 up front, great, very aggressive angles, probably one of the best rear suspension systems going, and just an excellent package. It's a little bit long on chain rings and a little bit short on dropper seat posts, but apart from that, can't really fault this bike, it's bloody great. So what exactly is the EI suspension system trying to do? Well, it's really just trying to solve that age-old problem with suspension bikes, trying to balance efficiency with using the suspension to give you comfort, control and traction. And so there's always been different ways that different manufacturers have tried to get around this problem. You know, some of them have had proprietary systems, for instance like specialized brain technology. Some of them experiment with different linkages that might give you better anti-squat properties. Some bikes use just a simple pro pedal lever like we're all accustomed to on a rear shock. But the EI system tries to get around this problem by using a clever system of little electronic gadgets, batteries, motors, and all kinds of brainy stuff going on up here. So how does this very smart bike work? Well, essentially you've got sensors down here on the outside of the fork lowers, and you've got another sensor doohickey on the inside of the crank axle. Now those two communicate with the RockShox Monarch shock here and let it know what you're doing and what the terrain is doing and tell it to adjust its compression dampening accordingly. So if the fork sensor detects that you're riding on smooth terrain, whilst the crank sensor detects that you're pedaling, that will engage a stiffer compression setting with the shock to give you very efficient pedaling. If you keep pedaling along and suddenly you hit a few little impacts, the fork sensor will detect that and that will communicate to the rear shock to engage a more moderate compression setting. So it will still give you efficient pedaling, but it will start to absorb the bumps a little bit better. Now if you stop pedaling altogether, or the fork sensor detects that you've started to encounter some rough terrain, it'll open up the suspension entirely to allow the suspension to work as best as possible.
A lot of people don't yet understand.
Now all this chopping and changing between the different compression modes happens incredibly quickly. How fast, we don't know, but we haven't been able to trick it yet, and we haven't once found that we've been in the wrong compression setting for whatever we're doing. I mean, we've tried to trick it. We've been pedaling on the road and then bunny hopped into rough terrain just to see if we could get the bike upset or out of balance, and it just hasn't happened. And that's the real advantage of this bike and this EI suspension system, is you just don't have to think. I mean, how many times have you ridden down a descent, got to the bottom and realised that you've ridden it with your rear shock locked out or your fork locked out? You just don't have to worry about that. Straight away you know the bike is going to be in the right setting for whatever the terrain happens to be at that instant. There's heaps of control offered through this little computer up here. I mean, it essentially operates and is easy to use just like a regular cycle computer. So I mean, if you've got a computer on any of your bikes and tell you your average speed and all that sort of stuff, it's very similar. All that same information is there, but you've also got the ability to customize the settings. So you can adjust the sensitivity of the sensors, so you can have it so it's less responsive and it'll remain in a locked out sort of position for longer, for more efficiency, which is great if you're going on a long cross-country ride or on smooth terrain, all the way down to having it so it doesn't engage the lockout very often at all. The other cool thing about this system is that you can toggle between the different modes, so you can set it so it's permanently on a medium compression damping, or you can set it to the locked out, or you can leave it open simply by toggling between it with your little thumb control here. All the wires and stuff for the EI system follow the existing cabling, so it's all pretty smooth. I mean, they're a little bit thicker, but whatever. The shock is a little different, you can see. It's got the little relay knob on top here, which is what controls the compression damping. Otherwise, it's a standard Monarch shock and can be serviced as per normal by your shop or by SRAM or whoever. The battery is mounted on the down tube where you'd normally find a water bottle, and it seems to have a very long life. I mean, we've been riding this particular bike on this charge for about 4.5 hours, and if you look at the battery indicator, it's still showing about 80% charge. So there's very few concerns that you're going to get stuck out on the trail unless you're planning on riding for 32 hours straight. The whole system only adds 300 grams to the bike and is another $300 over the regular price of the non-EI version of this bike. So in my mind, it's a complete no-brainer. For $300 and 300 grams, you're not talking a lot of money or a big chunk of weight. and it definitely makes a big difference to the ride. Is this technology necessary? No, it's not. I mean, you still have a good time on your bike, regardless of whether or not it's got electronics throughout it. But it does make a big difference to the way the bike performs. It's very simple in operation, it's totally intuitive, and it really does just make a great enhancement to what is already a fantastic bike. We're very impressed. We wanted to be skeptical about this system. We're looking for reasons to dislike it. I mean, we're purists at heart, but it's really won us over. We're really, really impressed.